20th, 2023 Commission meeting, San Juan County Conservation Land Bank Commission meeting to order. And the first item is public comment. So if there's anyone online that would like to make a public comment, please raise your hand or wave. And if you're here to comment on the budget public hearing, we'll wait and take your question or input then. Okay, I don't see anybody that's interested in speaking in general terms, so we'll move on to the approval of the September 15th, 2023 meeting minutes.
Krista?
Yes.
Could we start with the land acknowledgement?
I'm sorry. My apologies. Rewind. I'm going to start with this land acknowledgement. Let us acknowledge that we reside on and care for the ancestral lands and waters of the Coast Salish people who have stewarded and called this place home since time immemorial. And let us honor inherent Aboriginal and treaty rights that have been passed down from generation to generation. Apologies for that. Lincoln handed me that and I forgot.
The first time. Usually I do it.
Oh, good. Thank you. Now back to approval of the minutes from September 15th. Are there any corrections, additions, deletions?
I have a correction.
Okay.
I believe it's a correction. In the notes about Bree's comments about the what motivation, the minutes say that Bree sees the cabin as a great site to host employees temporarily while they look for housing. And I don't believe that's what she said. I think what she was talking about was putting, because I don't think anybody can live in that cabin. And I didn't hear that, but I think what I heard was the idea of putting a trailer on there on the slab.
The concrete slab.
Yeah. So anybody else could tell me if I heard that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's what she said.
No, I think that's right, Peggy. I'll get that corrected.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anything else from, you're waiting.
No, it is.
Sandy, Peggy, no.
Feels like an inquisition.
It is. Okay. Not hearing any other corrections. We will just accept them as is with the edit that Peggy Bill suggested. All right, so now we have an opportunity for the chair and other commissioners to make reports or statements. Anyone wanting to share anything with the rest of the commission or staff and public?
I will.
Okay. Okay, Peggy.
So I was able to attend the joint meeting between the Preservation Trust and or a few people from the Preservation Trust and the Land Bank, and I found it really interesting and informative. So I learned some things about how we kind of jointly put together stewardship funds for properties that we're kind of co-managing and co-owning, and it was a very helpful meeting. And then also some information about how that Angela had forwarded about a study that they had done about how to try to more effectively address the confusion between the Land Bank and the Preservation Trust. So she forwarded us some language about that. And I think probably everybody would like to see that.
Great, thank you. Marilyn?
I attended that meeting as well and found it informative, but other than that, I only have to report that I broke my record for visiting preserves this month, but I still have a whole bunch of them to get to before the end of the year, because that was my commitment, was to get to all the preserves in my first year. I did get to both the north and south trailheads of Turtleback and got to see both of those construction projects. I walked the Watmau Trail and I made it to Lopez Hill, which I so appreciated. I didn't hike, but I so appreciated the fact that there were safety vests there at the trailhead. That just made me feel so warm and fuzzy. So thank you, Amanda, for that.
Brian? I'm just going to make a quick comment. I dialed in for the council meeting where Aaron and Lincoln presented our budget, kind of an initial run through. In the past, there's been a request to just get some more information on our process or rationale as we build our budget. And they did a presentation to the council a couple of weeks ago, I think now. And I thought it was very clear and informative, and the impression I got from council that it was appreciated. So kudos to both of you for that. That was great. That's my input for the day. All right, not seeing anybody else that wants to talk. We'll move on to the partner update, and it looks like it's Vicki that's here.
Yes, good morning, Krista. Good morning, commissioners. Thank you so much for the opportunity to provide you an update. My updates are on Katy Mountain as well as the North Shore project. And with Katy Mountain, I've been working with Lincoln and Doug on the draft of the conservation easement, and just want to thank them for making that a priority. I know that it is a very busy time right now, and so just appreciate their attentiveness to turning that around quickly. We are, for that reason, we are on schedule to close on or before the end of the year. We're hoping to bring that to you all at the next commission meeting, and I'll be attending that in person to answer any questions that you may have regarding the trust role in the project. And then we're hopeful that we'll be able to take it to the county council at the end of November. And I'll also attend that meeting with Lincoln to answer any questions that the county council members may have regarding the project. So excited to see that move forward. And we are fortunately in good shape to meet our fundraising goal. I'm hopeful next month I'll be able to confirm that with you all, that we have been successful, but it's looking very promising right now. So we're to come on that next month. Now, where we still have some fundraising that we need to do is on the North Shore project, and we still have $350,000 to raise to purchase that conservation easement from the Conservation Land Bank. And so, as you all know, if folks would like to contribute to that project, please go to our website and you can donate to the project there. And just want to thank Tanya for working with Craig on our Director of Communications and Outreach on getting updated links to our website to be able to contribute to the project. We did sign our RCO agreement in the last 2 weeks for the PSAR and Salmon Recovery Funding Board dollars. And so that's a really big milestone to be able to accomplish in moving this project forward. And once we have the Katy Mountain easement completed, Kathleen Lewis, the project manager, will work with Peter and Lincoln on drafting the easement for the North Shore project, and excited to move that forward. And that's it for me.
Great. That is good news about the fundraising success so far. Congratulations. That's awesome.
Yes, thank you.
Are there any questions for Vicki?
I have a question.
Yep.
Vicki, on the North Shore project, is the appraisal done?
That is not completed yet. Vicki Adams, I believe, is hoping to get that done by the end of the year.
Okay.
All right. Question? No? Good. Thank you, Vicki.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. Yeah. There was a comment in the chat about background noise. We don't have any background noise in this room. Sandy, I don't know if you could describe what it is. Maybe that would help, but we're not.
It's probably the fan.
I think it was. I think it was something with Vicki's connection, because when she stopped talking, it stopped. So.
Oh.
Wait. I do hear it right now. I don't. It's just Peggy might hear it too. No worries, I can still understand, but if there were people that have their microphones on them.
I think Doug's thinking it might be the projector that's sitting next to the owl, and it's the fan that's going.
And sounds like the speaker's coming out of the Epson rather than the owl, so that might create a little loop.
Okay, so we just moved the owl to a new nest, and hopefully that doesn't have any huge consequences.
Hey, it stopped.
Oh, good.
Mostly.
Wow. Mostly. All right. Thank you again, Vicki. So now we have, and she's here, Christine Minnie's here to do the county council update.
I went to the old location.
Oh,
I was like, what's happening here?
Right.
Maybe I didn't have to get out of my pajamas. But no, we're here, and I should have known. Good morning, and I am truly happy to be here. Actually, it's a beautiful morning. So getting out of bed and being here is a joy. As always, I'm here to report on some fun, but also, I guess, some business. Council recently held a joint meeting with the town of Friday Harbor, which is actually the first time that has happened since I've been on council. And the agenda really concentrated on areas of mutual concern, which include Washington state ferries and the efforts to address reliability and trying to figure out how to join forces in our, with our voices. And I think actually we're heading in the right direction with that. We also spoke about affordable housing, got an update on the Argyle Malcolm lot, which, as you all know, is here in Friday Harbor. And I do believe that the lease agreement between the county and San Juan Community Home Trust is nearly complete. And the town spoke about their water situation and future availability. And it isn't that the water situation is bleak, just sensitive.
Christine,
yes, sir.
Sorry, I didn't understand what you just said. The water situation is bleak?
Isn't not bleak. Is not
Isn't
bleak.
Okay.
But I think sensitive is a better word for it. As always, I mean, as water, you know, can always be a valuable resource and worth paying attention to where it goes and how it's being used.
Thank you.
You bet. I don't know if I reported this last time, 2 months ago, but I'll say it again because it's worth noting that rather than holding a distribution round for the 2023 home fund money, did I talk about this before? We simply asked the 2022 recipients to reapply. So, I mean, for lack of a better word. And through that process, council awarded $2,115,000 to 3 housing partners. 1.5 went to Housing Lopez for the Lopez Village North project.
Thank you.
365,000 went to Opal for their Kitterway project, and 250,000 went to Lopez Community Land Trust for the Fisherman Bay Curve project. This is a really fun one. I'm really excited about this one. I really am.
Hold on, everybody.
On October 31st of this year, the county turns 150 years old.
Really? On Halloween?
On Halloween.
There's something to that.
I know. Which gives us a reason to celebrate. And so we will. On Halloween Day, we will kick off a year of various family-friendly events across several islands. But our first will be on Halloween Day on all 3 main islands. On San Juan Island, you can take a tour of the haunted courthouse. There are allegedly 2 ghosts in there. And that would be from 3 to 5. On Orcas Island, you can visit the Lucy B. Wellness Van, which will be at the Island Greens Halloween celebration. Also from 3 to 5, or actually 3 to 6. And on Lopez Island, there will be a county vehicle. I hope they make it a good one. A county vehicle at Lopez Village's Trunk or Treat.
Trunk or Treat.
Yeah, between 4 and 8.
Great.
One of the fun gifts for celebrating 150 years this year is a set of commemorative stickers that you can collect, and they will be at the various events throughout the year.
Nice.
It is really nice. The public, as you spoke to, process for the 24-25 biennial budget is well underway. In fact, the department budget hearings are almost complete. And on October 23rd, the auditor's office will be providing council with a, well, there will be a public hearing regarding county revenue. And then after 3 public touches of the budget, all in all, council will hold the final public hearing on November 28th for adoption. There are a couple of days after November 28th should the public hearings need to continue that are built into the schedule, but I'm hoping for November 28th. And if you have young ones under the age of 19, you can now register them for the flu or COVID vaccination, and there will be vaccination clinics on Lopez November 14th, Orcas November 15th, and San Juan Island November 16th. And you can simply make an appointment at sjccovid.com. Registration is not required, but is encouraged. And that's it for me. Yes, sir.
Are the vaccinations just for kids?
Pediatric.
Okay.
Yeah. There will be a limited amount of vaccinations for underinsured or uninsured adults. I don't believe those will have clinics. I believe those will be in office.
Okay. Any questions for Christine? Brent?
Do you have any update, Christine, on the selection of the next DCD director?
No, sir.
Are they doing interviews?
And interviews are imminent, but no update.
Okay. Yeah. Any chance for transparency or public, not looking for public hearing, but.
My initial response to that question, though not vetted, is, and I don't believe that a hiring process, if not public, lacks transparency. I believe that we run into personnel issues as it relates to privacy, and I would need to look more into that.
I mean, my interest is just an airing of what the issues are in relation to the county's future planning, and particularly the next comprehensive plan and growth, and how the candidates react to those issues. What is the background in that relation? It's really nothing personal, but it is about their background, qualifications, and approach. And I think that's something of great interest to the public.
I will definitely have the conversations behind the scenes with probably HR. And
I appreciate that. Thanks.
Peggy or Sandy, any questions for Christine? No. Mike? Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Yeah, thank you. Happy to be here.
All right. The next thing on the agenda is our quarterly financial update.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Is it not sharing? Oh, okay, so it's just like that. Okay, not full screen. Okay, for you guys today, I have a third quarter financial update for both the Conservation Area Fund and the Stewardship Management Fund. We'll start out with activity in the Conservation Area Fund first. First, we have noticed that cash has increased from second quarter by $431,000. Our LGIP, or Local Government Investment Pool, still sits at 3.7%. The interest rate on that has increased to 5.39% compared to 2.56% the same time last year. So it has gone up almost 3%. So that leaves our total cash and investment in the Conservation Area Fund at just over $5.4 million. Taking a look at revenue for the third quarter, first item of note is year to date, our real estate excise tax, that 1% is our main funder, sits at almost $3.18 million for our budget of $4 million for the year. We seem to be on good pace, as that seems to be an accurate number to hold up for the year. For the quarter, we were at $1.1 million. If we look at year-end projections, our average expected min and max, we fall right there as expected to be around 4 million in that range. Looking at expenditures in the Conservation Area Fund, if any of you noticed that we had the third quarter, it was significantly up in administrative expenses. These are just operating costs for admin. One of the things that falls under that is the expense for the annual report, printing and shipping for those annual reports can be pretty expensive. So that's a big cause of that. And also in this is just reflected of the collective bargaining agreement for the union with all represented employees. So it's just is adjusted in that third quarter, September anyway. But that is the main reason why it's significantly up, is just that expense for the annual report. Otherwise it will fall in that general range of
Aaron,
70.
How much is in there for the annual report?
35,000.
35,000.
Yeah, and that's to make it and print it.
Great,
and ship it.
We'll get to this, I guess, later in the meeting, but I'd like to know the impact of on our budget of the collective bargaining.
Okay.
What you're putting in for future increases in costs.
Okay, sure. Let me just write that down.
Does that figure also include strategic planning consultant?
There was one bill for that, but it wasn't significant. It was the first one to hit, so it wasn't a significant amount. It was maybe $2,000 or $3,000.
And can you remind me how much that contract is for?
Off the top of my head, I don't have the exact number. Lincoln, do you remember?
Thank you.
One final question. Is there a bond payment coming up this quarter?
In the fourth quarter, so bond payments, the schedules biannually, so 2 times a year we make those bond payments. The 490 in there.
Okay.
Based on when that was recorded, those were just the service charges got posted.
Okay.
In third
Thank
quarter.
you.
Yeah. Third quarter transfer to stewardship as budget reflects, 618,000 for operations transferred to stewardship for their activity. And just a reminder that 1.1 million in there for the interfund loan debt service, that is the $1 million principal payment and the 120,000 in interest back to stewardship for the Glenwood North Shore property acquisition, the first of 3 payments there. Just a little reminder of what that large number is for.
So Aaron, does that mean 3 years or?
3 years,
Yeah.
yes.
Thanks.
So we have 2 years remaining on that. Yep. We'll conclude at the end of 2025.
Does that interest show up as investment earnings in the stewardship fund?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes. And I have that pointed out here to show that from the other side also. Third quarter admin cost for year to date, admin cost sits at 7.11% of revenue, so one below the 10% threshold that we strive for. On to the Stewardship Management Maintenance Fund. First thing to note, third quarter cash increased by $140,000, almost $141,000. Total assets there between cash and investment sit around $6 million. That number is higher in cash than it is in our LGIP, Local Government Investment Pool endowment fund. At the end of the year, any significant overages do get transferred into that endowment so they can continue to collect interest funds from that investment pool in the endowment. So we'll make that transfer at the end of the year.
Is it okay to interrupt with questions?
Yeah.
I had a question about the cash versus investment totals. Do we have an investment policy that dictates how much we keep in cash, or at what point we move into investments? With 5%, it's it's a great opportunity.
Yeah, it has at times our options are limited. We do work with the Treasury Department on finding a good partner for, I think TVI Investments is who the Treasury uses to invest certain funds. We are limited in what we can do, but we have toyed around with a few years ago. The idea came up to possibly do some Treasury bonds and things like that outside of just the local government investment pool at kind of tiered levels, 5, 10, 15-year increments.
But can you move cash in and out of the pool?
Yes.
As you need to?
Yes, we can.
And is there a minimum that you want to keep in cash?
In cash, I don't think there isn't a policy with a specific number there. Now, like you mentioned, with interest going up, it is worth the consideration of not just holding it in cash, because there's more value now to have it in the investment pool, like you're alluding to. So it is definitely something like, hey, you know what, we could totally have that discussion of how much is appropriate to move into the LGI pool. LGIP, we can do it at any point. We can put money in and remove it without penalty. So if it's a conversation to have,
that was it.
Do that.
Thank you, Corinne.
Yep. Okay, on to revenues for Stewardship Management Maintenance Fund. As we were just talking about with Mike, just wanted to point out the impacts from the loan into revenues for the Stewardship Management Maintenance Fund. We have $1 million as the interfund loan, and 144, not all of that, it was 120 for that loan that got transferred in the second quarter, showing as investment earnings. And then I just have highlighted, other than the transfer into site enhancement for third quarter, the second largest revenue source at this time is investment earnings from the LGIP, where before this, for a few years, our highest revenue source would be plant sales, because interest rate was so low. But now it is a nice item of note that with a 5% interest, it is a much nicer looking number in there. And then reflected also in third quarter is that transfer for site enhancement from Conservation Area Fund, which was made in September. Some expenditures and activity for stewardship management and maintenance. We have capital projects that are reflected here, although there's other things that will definitely be mounting up in the fourth quarter. Things that hit the ledger here in third quarter our projects on North Shore and Turtleback Mountain. Big capital projects that were done there. And also stewardship activities overall, year to date, end of September, sits at 47% of budget. So we're still considerably under budget. But again, we are currently in stages of a lot of contracted work for capital projects on Mount Grant, and still more, some with Beaverton that haven't hit there, and North Shore also will have a higher site enhancement and capital impact in fourth quarter. So there is room for all these projects that we want to get done at the end of the year, leading us to just sitting at 47% at this point. And that is it. If there are any questions?
Yeah, a quick question. To follow the Maryland's comment, is it possible that you can get a report back at the next meeting on our investment options for that $4 million?
Yep.
5% of $4 million.
It's $100,000.
It's a good size number, I think.
Yeah.
Good that you brought that up.
Yeah, I'd like to be
thanks.
Of course.
Getting as much interest as possible if we can afford that right now, because it's free.
How would you do that? We don't have an investment advisor, or is there somebody at the...
No, well, you know, working with the financial officer for the commission, we just discussed, you know, Lincoln in that position. We kind of discussed, okay, you know, what does spending look like in the next month or two? Do we have any significant expenditures? What number what threshold do we not want to cross? Do we just want to put in, you know, transfer $1 million, $2 million? How much do we want to leave on the table? And then it's just the process of an inter-fund transfer through the treasury of making that transfer. We tell the treasury, hey, we'd like to spend this or transfer this much, and they handle it.
So we'd likely put it in LGIP?
Yeah, yeah. We do not have an outside county investment going on at this point. We have in the past, but at this point,
it's earning 5.4 or something %. It's not terrible. It's pretty good. Where you can buy T-bills and things like that.
Yeah, I do get quarterly updates from the outside company that the outside investment firm that the Treasury does use to get an idea of what bonds look like and treasuries look like outside, you know, up to 30 years, and rates are pretty close to what LGIP is at this point. There aren't many CD options that are any higher than, you know, what the interest rates are right now anyway. But it's always something to look at and discuss with. Sometimes it's just a conversation reaching out to them and seeing what type of plan they could pull together that seems beneficial for us. So it's definitely a process and a conversation to have, no problem.
I'd be more concerned about making sure that all of our extra cash is invested than in which investment it is right now, because I know there are limitations to our ability to invest. So
well, if it comes back next month as
I mean, it could be a ladder of some sort, you know, with some short-term part of that and some longer-term part of that, depending on the thing.
I've just a detailed question that I know there's probably, it makes sense to you, but not me. On the interest expense figures, both on the conservation and the stewardship funds, it looks like you're using the second quarter value, even though the third quarter value is there. Like in your memo, you referenced the 144,000 for stewardship and the 20s, or I can't read it, so small. 46,000, I think. But you're referencing second quarter, but I thought we were reporting third quarter.
Yeah.
And we have a third quarter figure, so I was just wondering what I was missing.
I mean, I spoke in the PowerPoint about it, but I was really just wanting to reference as a reminder what substantial things had happened in the past, just to keep, because I know this isn't always, you know, day to day. Some of these things I remember because I see all the time, just as a, hey, just as a reminder what that large number was for.
From last quarter.
Yeah.
Okay. But we have third quarter, which is here.
Yeah.
Which is not as exciting, but.
Yes. Yeah, and that's why, I did mention that it was, at least in stewardship, the 22,000 in interest, but I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah,
it was just something to point out as a large number on our budget, our revenue.
Great, thank you.
Expenditures, that kind of reminder.
All right.
Along with those lines, I thought we brought this up last month, but in looking at expenditures and acquisition plans, so just one page forward.
We're on that. That's to the budget.
Yeah.
We're going to talk to that. We're on financial for September.
Just you're looking at, oh yeah, I'll wait, bring it up.
If you wouldn't mind, yeah. So we're going to move into that in just a second.
I'm going to belabor this point. I'm sorry. So my second question is, in the stewardship fund, we have quite a bit of cash as well. And I can understand there's a lot of expenses going in and out of that all the time. But is there a reason that we need to keep money in cash in that fund? Okay.
No, other than just a decision that the commission would like to move some of that money into LJIP.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes. I'm sorry, I haven't looked at that one as well. And that's refers to my comment. Yep. Yeah. Thank you. I'm done belaboring.
Okay. Peggy and Sandy, last chance. Do you have any comments or questions for Aaron? And as long as you can hear us, great, but just make sure you let me know because sometimes people's voices here kind of fall out. I want to make sure you're still hearing what we're saying.
Thank you. Everything's very clear.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I just want to add, Aaron, you're doing a fantastic job. Thanks. You're doing a great job of explaining it.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. All right, so there's no other questions about the update on the financials for the third quarter. We're going to move into the 2024-2025 biennium budget. So in this is a public hearing. As we move into this process, Lincoln will do a recap of the budget. We did a pretty in-depth presentation at last month's meeting. Questions, there was good discussion. I wasn't here, but I reviewed the tape, and I think a couple things came up that were questions from commissioners that will get addressed, or there's some changes been made in the budget draft. So we'll let Lincoln do his presentation, then we'll open it up to public comment. If there's anyone here that wants to comment specifically about the budget, then we'll close those comments and the commission will go into discussion and hopefully an action item on approval for the 2-year budget. So all that being said, I'm going to be careful because it says the public hearing, public comment comes at 9:25, that if someone comes in, if we've moved past that, we will open up that opportunity for them to comment. Okay, so Lincoln, it's all yours.
All right, so I'm going to start with the Conservation Area Fund, and Aaron's going to scroll through this so that those will be your visuals. And I'm going to highlight a few things. As you said, we did run through this. One thing I'll mention before we actually get to the table, there was a comment last month about the language regarding the auditor potentially making changes to the budget. As you all know, the way our budget works, the Land Bank Commission makes a recommendation to council, and council has the ability to say yes or no, does not have the ability to make line item changes. So that verbiage about the auditor making changes really is limited to payroll benefits, IT charges, and county insurance adjustments, which tend to change from the initial budget to the final budget. So those are the things that can be altered, but nothing more than that. So moving into the Conservation Area Fund, the first couple of lines there, you can see that in 2024, we're projecting to have about 4.9 million in initial cash. And that goes up in 25 to 6.2 million. And I'll make a comment about that. These numbers for this fund are large because we don't have any acquisitions planned. We have one acquisition which we're continuing to pay off, and that's all at this point. That can always change and frequently does. And when we're doing acquisitions, typically, because they don't operate on a nice annual schedule, they come up and have to be done quickly. We have to work through the amended budget process. But this is the situation as you see it now. So some significant cash in the conservation area fund at present. We are currently moving down a little bit and looking at revenues. The big one here obviously is the 1% real estate excise tax. Our current budget for that is $4 million, and we're looking at reducing that to 3.75 in 2024. An effort to be conservative. You can see that this has come down quite a bit. So if you trace that back to 2021, going all the way over to the left-hand side, we got 6.7 million in 2021 and then 5 million in 2022. And this year it looks like we're just going to be about 4. So that's come down quite a bit, and we're looking at another contraction there. So 3.75 million for that. And then working our way down to other revenue, the intergovernmental revenue line for 2024, that 1.75 million. So 1.5 of that is the grants that we expect to receive for the Watmao Bay Addition project from the state. And then the 250,000 is the water right acquisition at Cascade Creek on Orcas. This one we've been carrying forward and hoping we'll actually get that money and make that acquisition of that water right in order to enable more water to flow in Cascade Creek to benefit the coho and chinook that we have in that creek. One of the very few places in the county where we actually have a viable salmon run. But we'll see whether that actually happens or not. And then lastly, moving down to sale of land. For 2024, we have a 600,000 number in there. 400 of that is for sale of a conservation easement to the Preservation Trust. This is another one in the succession of these projects. This one will be for the Hauschka property at the top of Katy Mountain, which we purchased last year with the understanding that they would purchase conservation easement, 50%, which is $400,000. The other 200,000 is some other land sales. These are broken out. We've been talking about these a bit, but still kind of an open question, quite honestly. And when I say that, the Land Bank Commission, when it purchases property, will make a provision if a resale is likely. The commission can elect to recommend resale of the property to the county council. And the idea there is that the conservation values have to be maintained. So if there's a property that has to be purchased outright, but might be sold with a conservation easement on it and maintain those values, that's what we're talking about here. So that's something that's reserved as an option when we make the original acquisition, and we've got a few of those. So I don't think we need to really go through the details too much of those unless you have questions.
I think Lincoln attached, or someone did on this packet today, the copies of the project summaries, which show the language in each of those when those were first approved way back. The potential for resale would exist on both of those. So that's there for your reference.
Exactly. Okay, so that's the revenue picture for the Conservation Area Fund. And so moving down into expenditures, the first line you see there is going to be the ending net cash. So what we're projecting to end up with at the end of 2024 and 2025. So that's the 6.2 million, 6.6 million. Again, if we have acquisitions, those numbers will change dramatically. The total administration numbers, you can see how much we spend on administration. We're limited to 10%. The next page does do a breakdown over the life of the program of administrative expenditures. These numbers for 24 and 25 represent about a 6% administrative cost. So well under that 10% limit. Okay, and then moving down, transfers to stewardship. These are big items. So we're making annual contributions to the stewardship endowment of $500,000. And then below that is payments for stewardship operations, 2.5 million. We'll come back to that in the stewardship and management budget. So we've got a bit of a breakdown there for you to look at, but that's a significant cost for us. Next, the acquisition costs, the $200,000, as I mentioned, for continuing to pay off the Katy Mountain Hauschka purchase. And then debt service. The $1 million item you see there is the repayment to the Stewardship and Management Fund for the loan that was made in order to purchase the North Shore property in 2022. So that was a $3 million loan. It's being paid off in $1 million increments plus interest. And so 2024 would be our second payment. 2025 would be our last payment on that item. Below that, the bonds and long-term debt. This is what we carried from previous bonds, acquisition projects. So that stands about $640,000, and that will continue in 2024, 25, 26. At the end of 2026, much of that debt will be retired.
Turtleback, right?
Mm-hmm. A whole slew of things, but Turtleback is still in there. That's true.
Oh, after 26?
No.
I can remember.
No, actually, Turtleback will be in there after 2026 because one of the decisions that was made when Turtleback was acquired was to borrow against conservation futures revenue, which unlike the REIT revenue continues on. And so the county commission at that point made a decision to bond for 30 years against the conservation futures revenue. So that runs through 2036.
36, okay, thanks.
Lincoln, can I ask a question before we go on to stewardship?
Sure.
Just for me to understand what's happening under the total administration fee, 2023 was 408,000, and then it appears to decrease to 355, and then it bumps up again 366. So with the collective bargaining agreement, I would have expected that to go up. Did they collectively bargain to lower their, isn't that where salaries and stuff show up in there?
So Aaron, I'll let you answer that.
Yeah, for the specific, the reason 2023 is so high is because of the budgeted strategic plan.
Right. Oh, I see. Oh, so if I went back to 22, which I did not do, and 21, 285 or whatever. That's
so
285, 302.
Total,
So it did go up.
Yeah, okay. It did go up, and then in 24 and then 25, those increases are just standard increases that are more status quo than projected without any specific large spending in professional services. The reason 2023 is so large is just that strategic plan.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yep.
All right, so other questions on the Conservation Area Fund? Very good. Moving.
I do have a quick question. Did you cover the 2025 sale of land. Is that the North Shore CE? Million.
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
That is.
Okay.
So when we acquired the North Shore property, a few things happened. We took out that loan from stewardship. The Preservation Trust committed to paying for 50% of the acquisition. They brought 1.5 million to the table at closing. And so this 1.75 is what they still owe us on that 50% number. And that's what we're expecting back in 2025. Thank you. All right, moving on to the Stewardship and Management Fund, and starting at the top with the operating cash and endowment funds. You see the difference between the two. Currently, the endowment funds are at projected to end up about 2.6, close to 2.7, and that's going to go up significantly in 2024 and 2025 as that loan is paid back. With a beginning cash number in 2025 of 7.5 million. So that's our starting point, and you can see moving down the revenues all the way down toward the bottom of that table. That's the $1 million loan repayment. So that's a big source of revenue. The other revenues for this fund come from the Conservation Area Fund. So there's that $500,000 contribution to the endowment and 2.5 million for operations. Hopping down to expenditures, the first thing you've got there is the ending cash numbers. So for 2023, we're projected to have 5.9. For 24, that jumps to 7.5. For 25, jumps to 9. So this is a fund that operates basically as an insurance fund. If REIT funding goes away, then this is the money that will be used to steward property. And that's about all I have to say there. So just moving down, administration really is the salaries of people who are working on stewardship projects. So our preserve stewards, land steward, stewardship coordinator, all those folks, that's where that money is going to. Management and maintenance, you can see for 2023, we've got that 846. Yes.
Question about the management and maintenance. So if it took a big jump in 2023 to 2024 for District 3. And I'm curious about that. You see what I'm referring to?
Yes. So we can, you're talking about the jump from 2023.
48,000 up to 100,000.
Oh, I see. Yeah. So we have that. We can talk about how that's working. We do have details on those numbers. We haven't broken that out by specific projects, but the management and maintenance part of it is really what we have to do to keep things running. Basically, if we have trails that need to be repaired, things that need to be redone, it's that kind of stuff, as opposed to specific capital improvement projects, which is the next line. So we can talk through. I'm not really prepared to get into the detail. Those numbers really shift in the management and maintenance fund as we go through the year because things come up, frankly. We have unanticipated costs, and so it's going to shift around from island to island, from preserve to preserve, based on what's actually happening on the ground.
Okay.
Did Sandy have a question on the chat for something?
It's So I think someone texted in or chatted in that the phone piece isn't working, but there isn't much I can do, at least, I mean, while we're in the middle of the meeting, because the computer, it's all attached to me. So I'm trying to figure out how.
So someone who's trying to call in is not, the meeting ID and all that's not working?
That's my understanding, but you know, I can't, while you're doing a presentation, if anything I touch on my computer will pop up. So I don't want to disrupt. So I'm trying to figure out how to sort that out.
Keep me posted.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Lincoln. Go ahead.
All right, so for management and maintenance, you can see that while it's come up in recent years significantly as we've taken on more properties and have a lot more public access happening, and also general management of the landscape to reduce fire risk, things along those lines. It's coming down. We're projecting it to come down a bit from 23 to 24 and 25 by about 100,000. So kind of where things seem to be headed. And the way we do that, Aaron sits down with our stewards and they really look through what's happening on the ground around the entire county and think about what their needs are, what they see happening. Obviously, this is a budget, so we're estimating, and we hope we're accurate. Sometimes it's above, sometimes it's below. There we go. Okay, so for site enhancement, these are capital. Sorry,
if I may. I notice agriculture is taking a big bump, and that's across all the districts. Why is that?
I can answer that if you
go ahead.
Because in prior years, before agriculture was really displayed here, CAWFEL expenses fell under District 2. And now that we have a specific agricultural management maintenance budget, all of those projects shifted into the ag.
So that's mostly CAWFEL.
I would say a fair amount of it is. I mean, there's fencing and other large projects too, but the influx of CAWFEL made it bump up significantly. Yes.
Good. Thanks, Aaron.
Okay, so moving down to site enhancement. These are capital improvement projects, and you can see the breakdown by island. So in 2023, and I'll note that the budgeted amount for 2023 at 550 is looking like it's going to be quite different in the end, and significantly lower. And that happens from year to year. We have projects planned. We have to line up contractors. And sometimes the projects actually happen, sometimes they don't. It's often quite difficult to meet construction windows, to line up a contractor to do something. So it's just a uncertain business. So there's a lot of fluctuation there. We're projecting that to jump up again in 2024. A lot of that is about getting the North Shore project open and the preserve open, which, by the way, at some point we're going to have to actually contemplate naming that property, since North Shore has just been a kind of holding pattern name.
Thank you.
But we have other preserves that also will be opening, or significant things that will be happening. For instance, the Beaverton Marsh project, where the big action next year would be making that connection from Lindy Park to the preserve. And that will take you out to a loop trail. In the following years, we will have to contemplate creating that boardwalk across the marsh, which will be an extremely expensive project. It's not really reflected here. And also Katy Mountain, we're anticipating having open next year as well. So you do have those capital improvement projects broken down in the tables. I don't know if you want to go through any of that. Otherwise, I think that's about it for me.
I have a quick question myself, and then you want to undo and redo? Is that what it looks like we have to do?
Yeah, a few people have said they can't use the phone in portion.
Mm-hmm.
So I think the only way that I can figure out what's going on with the phone, if there's the wrong number when we switch to a new meeting, I will have to pause, or we'll have to go out of this meeting so I can look at the meeting invite, or pause and I can open up another screen and then redo that. So I'm not sure what best process to do.
So potentially these could be people that would like to make a comment on the public hearing. So I think it might behoove us, although I'm anxious about making a disconnection and losing everybody. Not that that ever happens to you guys, but
well, we could, I think I can just pause the meeting. Yeah. I mean, put our recording on pause, and we can pause. And then I'll just open another screen so not everybody has to deal with that while I look at it.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, if everyone wants to take a break now.
That's what I was going to suggest. That maybe we're scheduled not to take a break right now, but why don't we do the 10 o'clock break now for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. And like that all is that okay? Is that, because I would like to have people, if they want to make a public comment, that they continue to hear the presentation and then get that chance. So, so I have 9:32. So let's say 9:42, we'll come back to Lincoln's presentation. Sandy.
Yeah, so can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so just kind of a general question about...
Can it wait until we reconvene the meeting? We're going to take a break now. I don't want to we're going to, yeah, thank you.
All right.
Okay. Sorry, Lincoln.
I'm done.
I know. No, I'm going to, okay. Now can they hear me? Yeah. Can you hear me now, Peggy? Anybody? Great. So we're a couple minutes late coming back from the break, but I think we solved our technical issues, hopefully. So we'll watch for perhaps additional people to call in that may or may not want to comment as part of the public hearing. So I think I stopped Lincoln just when he was about finished. Is that correct?
Correct.
So then I'm going to open it up to, well, let's see. So that's all done. So now we will open up the public portion of the meeting to anyone who would like to make a comment related to the adoption of this particular budget. If you're wanting to make a public comment about generalities, other issues in the budget, there will be a second public hearing opportunity before we adjourn the meeting today. But this moment in time is for people to make give their input on this particular budget that's on the table. So I will look and see if anyone has raised a hand or. Okay. Oh my gosh. Oh my God. Great. Well, actually, I recognize all these people, so I'm not sure. Someone didn't know just joined. So this is a second call for public input on the 24-25 budget of the Conservation Land Bank. Okay. Hearing no request for public comment, I'm going to close that. And now we'll move into discussion. We've already asked questions and whatnot, but this is an opportunity for the commission amongst themselves, commissioners, to chat, have questions, express concerns, perhaps volunteer a motion. So I will put it out. I had one question from your presentation related to the capital expenses then. So if we budgeted in 2023 for a certain amount, and it was $554,000, but it looks like we're going to spend under $300,000. I'm wondering where those projects are going. Like, for example, agriculture, I guess, that says that you were thinking you might spend $62,000, but you haven't spent any but in 24, you're estimating 30,000. So did some of those projects just fall away? Like what would have happened with that 62, or was it just a just in case figure?
Typically, they're projects that just don't get done. Like I'll give you an example. In Beaverton Marsh, with that project, we were hoping to do the connector trail between Lindy Park and the preserve this year, but we ran into permitting delays, and that unfortunately carried us past the construction of it. So we're not going to spend that money this year. It's going to bump into next year. And that's a lot of what happens.
Well, that's kind of so I'm wondering if the 24, 25 numbers reflect a carryover of a project. Because again, just for me, the 62,000 didn't happen, but the number we're projecting for next year is half of that 62,000. So I'm just wondering how that.
You're talking about the agriculture.
Yeah, I just grabbed that as an example.
I don't know, Aaron, do you have?
Yeah, I can speak on it a little bit. A lot of what was in ag in 2023 was fencing in their fencing projects, and also some work at Fraser Homestead. And after losing the leasee on that property, we're kind of in a waiting pattern for that. So Charlie's plans just shifted to other things. Some of those are coming back in 2024. Some of them are coming in 2025.
Okay, yeah.
So it's just deferred projects.
So they are, some of the rest are showing up. That 62,000 wasn't a great example because it just disappeared.
Right.
But I was curious where it went.
Yeah. Just things that projects that just didn't get done in the capital sense. Doesn't mean work didn't get done. No. Just not capital improvements.
Right. Okay, Sandy has a question.
My question is, this would be to Lincoln. Do we have, can you hear me okay? I hear an echo of myself.
Yes,
okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, with the county's new 32-hour work week, I'm curious how impactful that is to our staffing ability to keep up with the projects. I realize that it's not specific to this budget, but has that been considered? Are we going to need to up staff because hours have been reduced? Just curious.
That's a great question, and we're still just in the learning process. The assumption for the 32-hour work week made by the county is that there would still be the same amount of productivity happening, even though someone might be working 8 hours less. And a lot of studies have shown that. How that works from job to job is a big question. You know, some jobs there's not that. It's just not possible to actually increase your productivity like that. And so we're going to have to wait and see how this all plays out. My guess is you'll see more of the impact as we come back with amended budgets to try and deal with this as best we can. So we just don't know at this point. It's an open question.
Marilyn.
I just wanted to second Sandy's concern, because when we take 20% out of the budgets that people are actually out in the field working, you can only work as fast as humanly possible, not 20% extra. So I'm really concerned about how much of the work that needs to be done is going to fall by the wayside or have to depend on commissioners to show up and do it.
Well, that and also the stress level, you know, if the goals remain the same and the time is less, I'm always concerned about staff pressure level and getting burnt out.
Yeah, and it may very well be that we have to increase our staffing commitment. It may be that we have to increase what we spend on contractors. And it may be that some projects just are not going to get done. We'll have to figure all of this out going forward. And then, of course, there's Maryland, who's already slotted for 20 hours a week out on
Peggy, you had a question?
Yeah, so kind of following up on the comments just brought up, I'm assuming that the stewards and the staff on each of the islands has had a chance to kind of weigh in terms of what their needs are. And specifically on Lopez, is there a need for more hours to assist Amanda? She's got a pretty full plate. And I'm trusting that conversation is already underway.
We're going to be having a lot of conversations about this over the next few months, and certainly into next year as the next field season starts. So we'll be doing our best to stay ahead of this, but there will be some trial and error. There's no question. And as I said, we do have the ability to do amended budgets like we do with acquisitions or any other big projects that might come along, so that I would expect to see some adjustments without a doubt.
Mike, did your question get answered where I stopped you and asked you to keep it until the budget time?
I got it.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks.
So, discussion finished.
I guess I'll ask one. Following up Peggy's question, I was thinking specifically about Watmouth, which she's probably talking about. We made a big decision at the last meeting to keep it. That means the $2.5 million acquisition cost plus stewardship to restore and build. I assume that all of that stuff was in the budget. I mean, there hasn't been a change. So the budget anticipated our keeping it, and that's status quo?
Yeah, pretty much. We've got some things that we're working through as we do whenever we have a new acquisition. There are uncertainties that unfold. So our initial concern here with that property is site stabilization. We've been in that period where it has not been open to the public. And we've been doing some assessments, looking at what we do with the cabin, et cetera. We're about to start a cultural resources assessment to give us a better idea of what we got on the site, and ecological assessment. So once we get through those, we'll start in earnest working on the management plan. And I think a new element there for us will be to really figure out how we're working with the tribes on this property, since they've expressed significant interest in it, and it's obviously a very important cultural site and wrapped into Watmouth in general. So I would expect we'll be working a lot with the Bureau of Land Management on the National Monument and on our properties, and we'll be doing a lot with them to figure out interpretation and management.
Yeah. So we'll just do, as we get into the management plan and improvements, we'll just do a budget amendment if and as needed.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. If everyone's comfortable with the discussion that we've had, I'm seeking a suggestion on how to move forward.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
To adopt the 2024-25 biennium budget as presented by staff.
Do you just make a motion?
I did.
I'll second that.
So we have a motion to approve the 24-25 biennium budget as presented by staff. Is there any need for further discussion? Last chance. All right, we will take a vote. All those in favor say aye or raise your hand online.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? And we're missing one commissioner, Amy Trainer, so she'll be an abstain, I suppose. All right, well, the motion carries unanimously. Good work on all the budget figures, you guys. Appreciate all the time and detail. It's always informative, so that's great. And then we don't have to do anything for 2 years. Now we're gonna, yeah, that's right, except multiple amendments. Now we're gonna move into the director's report, acquisition and resales.
All right, so I'm gonna have Aaron pull up the screen here in a minute, but I'm gonna start actually with the two lower ones, the Orcas and San Juan. I realized the way I labeled these might have created some confusion. So in Orcas, in the Entrance Mountain parcel resale, when we purchased Entrance Mountain, there were 3 parcels. The one we're talking about is a 10-acre parcel that's separated from the other 2, and the intention was to resell it with a development restriction. And that's what we're working on now. We have a neighbor who is interested in purchasing it. So we've been talking to them about what that restriction might be. It will be a no-build conservation easement. They are interested in retaining the ability perhaps to put in a well on that property. So we've been talking that detail through with them and some other things. But in that case, we would be reselling the parcel and retaining a conservation easement on it to limit what development can happen. The one below that, the Katy Mountain resale. This is the one we just talked about at the beginning of the meeting with the Preservation Trust, where we purchased the property. And at the time we purchased it, we came to an agreement with the Preservation Trust that they would purchase a conservation easement on the property. So this is a case where our goals really line up. And in the end, we would retain ownership of the property and the ability to manage the property. The conservation easement would simply place restrictions against developing the property and doing some other things. But they're really in alignment with us. And the whole goal here is if we can get some of the private money that they bring to the table to put in this project, as we've done many times with them on other projects, it enables us to stretch our dollars further. So for all practical purposes, it would not affect how we would manage that property, but there will be another layer of protection on it so that it can't be developed or resold without some significant issues. So that's our objective on those two, and that's the process involved. On Lopez, we can pull up that slideshow. There are 2 things going on in Lopez. The first, you haven't really seen this one. These are both, you've seen the Demetric conservation easement donation, and we're continuing to work on that one. That's by Channel Preserve. It's fairly straightforward. You're all familiar with it. This one is new to most of you. We have a family who is interested in donating a property. So as we go forward here, you can see this is on Swift Bay. That's an outline of the property. So it's really behind the beach there. We can go on to the next one and keep going. One more, and there. So this property is largely wetland. There's a question about its development potential. In any case, the property owners are interested in donating it to us. The interesting thing here about this particular property is that the property next to it, if we can go back to the previous slide, you can see that line kind of going up toward the beach. Well, there's a tide gate there. So this is a elevation 0 property, And this whole area here at one point was a salt marsh. It's currently freshwater marsh because of the tide gate. At some point with sea level rise, we anticipate that's going to change and this will become salt marsh again. So this is an interesting property for us to hold. There will be definitely some restoration potential here. Of course, the hope is that as the marsh became more saline, that restoration would kind of happen on its own, but we don't know. So it's really a good thing to have. If there's an opportunity where we can facilitate that restoration happening, we'll be in a good position to do it. And we'll see what goes from here. There's no real public access potential for this property and really no management costs associated with it other than monitoring it from time to time to make sure no one's encroaching or doing anything like that. So that's the basis of this donation.
Peggy.
Yeah. So I did visit this property and talked with the landowners about their interest in donating this. This site is pretty interesting, and there is a lot of water in there in the winter time. So it's already like really rising up. And there's a lot of waterfowl in there too. So it's a really interesting area for that reason. And it'll be interesting to see with climate change what happens along the shoreline for all these houses. They're already having problems. But I agree. I think this is an interesting one that's kind of holding a spot for the future, you know, as things develop over time. But it's a very generous offer on their part too. They had questions about whether they might be able to have a development right over on the far side, but it did not seem that was really possible.
It's an interesting area because I think, I may be wrong, but the wetness, the water that accumulates there in the winter is, I don't see them getting salt water through that gate, but it fills up so much that they're getting hit with flooding into their homes from the fresh water. So climate issues haven't even, well, partially come up, but you know, the worry about salt water coming in, they're right now dealing with the fresh water in the winter encroaching into some of the house foundations and stuff. I've seen it run over that dam gate where the water's just pouring out into the sound. So yeah, it's it would be tricky to try to do something developmentally there, I think, but very generous offer. There are a ton of wild waterfowl there, lots of bird watching. It's great.
I just drove past this a week ago and I was thinking that looks like it's going to be a salt marsh pretty soon. So my only concern would be if the land bank owns a portion of that marsh, whether saltwater or freshwater, do we have any liability for the houses, which you just spoke about, the flooding potential for the houses along the road there?
That's a good question.
I don't think so. It's not, we're not developing the property, so nothing we're doing on it would be impacting adjacent properties. It's a natural area. You can see that almost certainly along on the property to the east, they've done some work to try and increase the flow. But I just don't see much of anything happening on this property going forward.
Is there a formal homeowners association there? Do we know, Peggy, do you know if there's a, yeah.
I don't recall. I don't think so. I think they're all pretty individual people. Yeah, I don't think so, but I don't know that for a fact.
I don't know either.
Okay, I would just be curious if they had something, if there was something like that that we might become a party to by owning that property.
Yeah, I didn't get that sense.
I don't believe so.
Okay. We might just check.
Right. So my question is kind of the opposite of Marilyn's, although I thought that was a really good one. Would that property be potentially a candidate for mitigation funds, even though we don't own it? That is the marsh.
Unclear. I think that, you know, this area here along Swift Bay is going to be a tough one. And so if there are going to be projects to try and keep that road open and usable, I'm not sure where that's headed in the future, frankly. I think it's just going to be increasingly difficult to do so. But I guess there's a potential for that to happen.
All those homes there, my understanding, they own the tidelands and the home parcels. So the county road bisects each of their properties, but there are 3 public access points that the county tries to maintain, and people don't put their boats and stuff in front of it. But the rest of the tidelands in that area are privately held. So just FYI.
It's like Peter.
Oh, Peter, thank you.
Hi, everybody. I don't know the property well, but I do think it would be a great property for the land bank to own, just in terms of the opportunities it presents for restoration work. I doubt that mitigation would be on the table, but I think it's probably somewhat inevitable that if the land bank owns it, we're going to have to contend with that tide gate in some manner, whether it's removing it, replacing it, upgrading it. Is the source of the flooding because the tide gate's not large enough, not letting water out into the marine environment, or, it seems like we need to do some due diligence there to understand that system a little better. But I think it's kind of an exciting opportunity.
So now, Lincoln, you need from us just permission to continue?
Yes.
And can we do that by consensus? Anybody have any concerns about continuing conversations? Sandy?
I too find it interesting, and always happy when an owner is generous to donate. And I do agree with Peter and some others that we should do some diligence finding out about homeowners association and other owners of that marsh area, and work with the county department on that road there and what's planned in the future and what we might end up, just so that we go in eyes wide open and aren't surprised so much later on. So my vote would be continue, but talk a little bit more about the overall implications going into the future, what we might expect.
Thank you. Okay. If that discussion is run its course, we'll move on to the strategic planning update. Brian.
Yeah, I would just second Sandy's comment. Peter's comment about the tide gate, I think is important, and my mind is going to the dam at Zylstra. So we should really look at that and do some due diligence. Flooding is an issue.
Potentially, I guess what I would see is that if this donation, not so much, but if all of a sudden it seemed like a good idea to other homeowners to donate the rest of their wetland parcels to us, then we have the potential for owning the source of excess water getting into their home. So that, I guess that would be the thing I would just have some conversation about with somebody, so that we know that we're not going to be on the hook for keeping their basements dry.
Yeah. Okay. I will take a look at this.
Okay. It's exciting though. Equally as exciting is the strategic planning process. And so we're going to move into that now. Do you want to give an update? You did get yesterday a summary from Hillary. Lincoln sent it out, and it kind of was a pretty detailed summary of the work that's been done so far and what's coming. So should we go through that and do a quick summary, or should we just open it to questions from commissioners?
Well, I'll give you the 30-second update.
Okay.
So where we are in the process, as you all know, the first part of it, aside from a lot of work going into developing the scope and hiring a consultant and all of those things, we're now at the stage where we're actively going out to the community and doing interviews of people. It's put a lot of effort into identifying what we hope is a good cross-section of the public and interviewing those folks in detail. And I think we're close to 20, I think we're beyond 20 now. We've got both the consultant doing interviews, and then we have staff also and commissioners doing some interviews. I'm optimistic that we'll end up with maybe 50, maybe more interviews completed. The consultant now is going on to phase 2 of the outreach for this, which is to use the county's Engage platform. And so they're coming up with questions and a format for that. And we're anticipating putting all of that information onto the Engage platform probably by sometime early in November. So that will be something that's available to the entire community for people to take a look at the questions that are on there and respond to that survey, giving us feedback. And obviously the whole goal here is to really just get input from people on, where they see us going, where should we go, what are the kinds of things we should be doing. Obviously, there are constraints on this, and that we have our mandate, which is set by state enabling legislation. But within that mandate, which is very broad, there are a lot of choices that can be made. And so the goal here is to really get feedback from the community on what we've done and what they hope us to do in the future. Following that, once we have the results of that, we'll be doing, the consultant will be undertaking a strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Thank you. I always fall short on the acronym there, the SWOT analysis. And that will be in advance of our annual retreat, which will be in November, where we'll really sit down. December, right. Strike that comment. Yes, December, that's when the annual retreat will be. And that's where a lot of the work will be done, pulling together these various threads and giving the consultant their marching order, so to speak, to come up with a draft of the strategic plan. So we'll hope to have that in hand in January and go from there. Not finalized, but at least in draft form.
So one of the things I think when they made the presentation, and I think at a couple other commission meetings, we were shown a draft of a pre-retreat packet, which included kind of a matrix that we were told we would eventually fill out by ourselves as a SWOT analysis. But what they've added to this, it's in the summary, is that they may have us still fill that out, but what they're now setting up is an anonymous online SWOT analysis where we would do the same thing, but instead of writing it on paper and bringing it to the retreat, they're going to ask us to give our input into that software by a certain deadline so they can then pull that all together. So there will be no names attached to it. It's just going to be a collection of data so that it's just a different approach. That was new to me that I just found out, but I have to say I'm kind of supportive of it because it lets people not have to go up in front of all of their friends and family and put those red dots on certain boards and stuff. You can do it online, and your thoughts, you can be pretty candid with what your thoughts and concerns are. So that's the only thing that's really kind of changed from what they initially presented to us. And I'm just looking to see. There is, so she's outlined on this paper that you got, the retreat goal and desired outcomes from the retreat. Each of these things, as she's noted, are things that the subcommittee agreed on. So it would be great if you would, if you haven't done so already, if you would reflect on that goal and those outcomes, because if there's significant discomfort or concern, she would like to know that we are in and those feel comfortable to us. And if not, that we give them a heads up so they can see what adjustments can be made. So I just encourage you to read through that document to let you know what is happening. Any questions?
So feedback on that document would go to you or to?
You could send it to me, or you could, yeah, why don't you send it to me? And then because then it'll kind of go through I'm on that subcommittee, right. And we can, but don't dilly-dally. Time marches on. So, and then I think that's about it. The only question I had for subcommittee people, but do we meet again before the survey gets posted, or are the questions that are going on the survey, there must be some mechanism where those can be run by at least the subcommittee. Do you think that's happening?
That'll happen. I'm not sure what the schedule looks like.
Okay.
I think we have another meeting scheduled.
So it just might be via email or something. Yeah, okay. I'll make sure, I'll check with Hillary to make sure, because that only makes sense that we have a look at that. Peggy or Sandy, any questions about that? Peggy and I are divvying up some of the phone calls and interviews that we're going to do with people. So I'm going to talk to her hopefully later today, Peggy.
Yep.
You had a question?
Yeah, I have a question about when, anyway, there's a little feedback here. I have a question about when the results of the interviews will get kind of brought to everybody's attention.
Yeah, we'll have some results from those interviews, certainly in advance of the retreat. And hopefully some of the survey results, broader survey results as well, for you all to consider.
I think they want us to, is it a November 3rd that they want the interviews completed by? Do you remember? I remember seeing that date.
November 3rd.
November 3rd.
Yeah, something on that date.
Yeah, because they've been conducting them for a while. I'm not sure about that, but I know I'm going to try to get mine lined up all next week.
Yeah, I would expect that to extend a little bit, but not much. It's really cranking along now.
Yeah. Sandy?
Yes, I'm curious on the Engage platform, the community-wide survey. I would think it would be our job to do the promotion for it, to get the word out to the public, right? Not the strategic planners. So do we have a plan for that? Get the word out so we can hopefully get some robust participation.
That's a great question, Sandy. And that's something that we have not developed at this point, but you're absolutely right. And keep in mind, the Engage platform is something that's still relatively new to the county. What I've seen unfold with some of them, for example, the Trails one or Public Works one that went out, you had some folks who took keen interest to the Lopez Trails group, certainly passed that one around and got quite a bit of responses on it. And I think it will be incumbent on us to figure out who's got that kind of mailing list and good responses, good potential for responses, and get word to them. So that's something we put some thought into.
Any other questions?
Do we want to talk a little bit about retreat logistics? I know it's early, but.
Related to, sure, in what regard?
Well, there in the preliminary stuff that Hillary sent out, there were some questions about breakfast together, ? Dinner together, ? I said yes. I think it's important that we share a meal, at least a meal together, stay together if possible. One of the things we talked about is the difficulty of logistics if we each come each morning on separate ferries, which are not dependable. So we've talked a little bit about the possibility of staying on wherever we're going to have the retreat. So
Lincoln and I are working on that right now.
The retreat is going to be here in this room.
Yeah.
And we're working on an overnight option, which we'll be able to report back on. But as far as meals, yes, it's going to start really early in the morning and go through lunch. We're anticipating having a dinner. And all of this is open to the public as well. So not that we're providing dinner for the entire community.
They can come and watch us eat. We don't have to feed everybody.
Might have the budget for that, but people are welcome to attend.
So Lincoln and I are going to go look at a place that could be available to us that would house people in a simplified manner, meaning that sleeping bags will need to be brought, but there are beds and flat sheets and pillows and pillowcases that can be used. So it's not really a hotel, but it is it used to be a bed and breakfast. And we're going to look at that to see if this could accommodate us for, dinner or heavy hors d'oeuvres or whatever we're hoping to do that Thursday night. So we're going to go look at that right after this meeting. And if that doesn't look like it's going to work, then by this time next month, we'll have more to report on something else. Okay. Next item is destination management plan.
Well, very exciting topic. The reason it's on our agenda is that there are some items in that plan that pertain to the land bank, some of which are very straightforward and I would characterize as non-controversial, and that is talking about putting trails on land bank properties. If there's any big deal there, we're proceeding with those activities regardless of this plan or not. There are two items in there, however, that I think we need to talk about. One relates to the Zylstra Lake property. As you all know, there's a current effort outside of this plan to try and do a trail between town and Zylstra. That effort is being led by the county manager's office, and this plan doesn't touch on it. And we're also not working on that project at all. That's a county manager's project. But in this plan, there's mention of a trail that goes from Zylstra Lake south to Baylor Hill Road, which is an interesting idea. It goes across San Juan Preservation Trust property, and that we haven't had any conversations with them really about this prospect. And so my recommendation for, as far as this plan goes, is the Preservation Trust has properties that are open to the public. They do public trails. If there's going to be a trail that in fact connects Zylstra down to the south like that, that's really going to be something they're going to have to take up, and probably isn't appropriate to be in this plan at all. So the second one is more controversial, and that is the fact that in one of the tables, it's presented that the county will try and protect 40% of the landscape in one way or other, and that item is assigned to us. Very problematic in that there is a lot of regulatory pieces to it. We do not do regulation. That's outside of our bailiwick. The only thing that we do is purchase property or interests in property from willing sellers. And so that's one thing. The 40% number itself, I think, is extremely problematic because realistically, for the purposes of this plan, what we're talking about is providing recreational areas for people or having properties that we can effectively manage for things like climate change, to make the landscape more resilient. So it's talking about outright acquisition. So that 40% number really is an unattainable number. And I just wanted to revisit some of the things that we put up in some of our community conversations. So Aaron, if you can pull up that PowerPoint that we just had, as we scroll down, and it'll get into this. But I just want, there's a lot of misinformation out there, a lot of confusion about what this means. And I think it's really important for us to clear this up so that people don't have these misunderstandings about the reality of the situation. Okay, so one of the things in listening to this, I threw this out there months ago, and people didn't really believe me. I think that this is out there about how much land the county actually owns or does not own. And sure enough, in this case, an assertion was made that the county owns 40% of the property. Well, that's just not true. So go forward, keep going. So this is what we own. You can see our preserves on this map. We're proud of our accomplishments. So we do have 39 preserves, and 30 of them are open to the public. That's great. In terms of overall percentages, though, it's wrong. So let's just keep going. And there's the question: how much do we actually have here? And the reality is, our ownership is about 4.5%, not 45, but 4.5%. That's it. If you're looking at public conservation land, the total is about 16.5%. So this is a table really that's assembled out of the assessor's data, and I think this is a source of a lot of the confusion. Because people see this pie chart and they see a lot that is not taxed at fair market value and conclude that's what the county owns. That's not true. The reality is this, that the county is 83% privately owned, and it's taxed at fair market value. I think that's about 54% is taxed at fair market value. These other categories are mostly private land. So people who have farms, who are in current use zoning, designated forest land. There are properties that are exempt. There's senior exemptions, disabled exemptions, things like that. But this is the reality. So 83% privately owned, 17% public, about 16.5% of that is public conservation land. So that 0.5% is other things like court properties, school properties, the county campus properties, those kinds of things. And that's our reality. So if we're thinking about where this puts us in terms of how it relates to other counties, if we go on to the next slide, you can see, if you look around Western Washington and think about the amount of public land in each of these counties, we are at the bottom of this list. That's just the reality. Most of these other places have extensive federal ownership. We don't have that. We just have a lot of private land. Going forward, one of the things, and that's it for the slideshow. One of the things that's in there talks about spending $26 million on acquisition, and that's something that was in the recreation, open space, and stewardship plan. Of course, that's dependent on land bank reauthorization for us to have that money. But what does that mean? If you think about it, about what property costs, that 26 million over a 6-year period, first of all, a lot of that is going to come from somewhere else. It's not coming from REIT revenue. We're very good at finding other sources of money to supplement REIT funding. But even with that, you're not going to get beyond maybe an additional 1,000 acres that you might be able to purchase. So that's less than 1%. So we're talking about really going from 16.5 to 17%, 17.5%, something like that. And 20% figure would be an aspirational goal.
But that's public lands, it's not land bank. That's all public
lands.
land.
The 16.5% is all public lands.
Public
So that's federal, national parks, national monument, National Wildlife, Fish and Wildlife, National Fish and Wildlife Service. BLM is the national monument, state parks, Department of Natural Resources, all of that total. You know, we're 4.5%. The rest of that 16.5 is those other ownerships. If we were successful in acquiring another 1,000, 1,500 acres, something like that, you know, we're talking about bumping it up by 1%, maybe. That's it. So this 40% figure, I think, is just created a lot of confusion. It's not accurate. And so I think it's really important for us to correct that misunderstanding. And I sure hope that that this plan gets a lot of revision. It's not a product that we've been working on. So hopefully it will come back in a different form.
Has that comment been made?
That's kind of a good question. And I would actually punt that to Councilperson Meny and ask her what she would like. Is this good enough? Do you want something more from the Land Bank Commission to the council to try and clarify this point?
I think that's a good question. I know for myself, which I'm always only ever speaking for myself, our conversation yesterday and this meeting today is good enough for me. But that it might be appropriate that this information on some level goes to my seatmates.
Is there an issue, or is that doable, that you could write a letter summarizing the two major concerns that we have with that plan?
I can. I've already expressed my concerns to Mike Thomas, but I can do something more public to the council. That would be fine.
Do you need a motion for that?
I think consensus is probably fine.
Peggy has a question.
Yeah, I'm curious about where that 40% came from. Maybe I'm just curious about that because it's such a big, I mean, it's so far from the reality. So who brought that in?
That's a great question. And I think that was, this plan came out of the Environmental Stewardship Department. And I think when they look at this question about conservation, they're looking at it in a lot broader way than we are. So they're thinking about regulatory areas like shorelines, which might not be developed, or areas along streams, those kinds of things. But honestly, I don't even think we have that data out there, and I don't regard that as being relevant to this plan. While it's certainly important for us to protect wetlands and shorelines, and regulation is an important thing, it doesn't really, any numbers you might come up with are questionable, quite frankly, and how it relates to this plan is really important to keep in mind that this plan really is about, okay, what do we have where people can find a trail, or what areas do we have that we can actually actively manage to reduce fire risk, or things like that, So that means outright ownership, and that 40% is just nowhere near the reality.
Just one follow-up on that is in the conservation community related to climate change, there's the 30 by 30 kind of goal. But so I guess my question was whether that was tied into that at all, but I think your answer covers it.
Marilyn. I have one other place in the plan that I was questioning, and that's the very first project listed in the table is to acquire additional land for camping on San Juan within 1 mile of Friday Harbor. And the first funding source listed is the REIT, which would indicate that that was going to be a land bank project. And since we've never talked about this.
No, it's not. That is a county parks aspirational goal. The county has access to sellers REIT funds. That's not land bank.
It's not land bank.
That's a different source of funding.
Thank you.
Do they stipulate the different REITs? They have REIT everywhere in this plan, but sometimes it might help.
Also a point of confusion,
if they specified which REIT they were referring to, because it creates, we're the most familiar one potentially, and people default to us being behind any number of things.
Right. That would be really good to clarify because it was something that occurred throughout the Ross plan too.
Sure.
I had no idea.
Yep. Good point.
Yeah. Doug.
Yeah, something that wasn't included in this, but I see is linked. That was also in the presentations during the community conversations was just the confusion about potential development. And I don't know if you have access to that slide in terms of like what maximum development looks like in the islands, population levels, and
the build out
parcels from current levels.
Yeah, I don't have that slide in this attached to this. What's your, where are you going?
Just, I was hopeful you had that one just as a look, because there's, I think in some of this confusion too is where we currently sit in terms of buildable lots. That's a diminished resource. Where I don't remember your numbers from that, but it was, I was really surprised by it.
Yeah, there are many lots still in the county which are do not have residences on them. And off the top of my head, I'm going to say it's somewhere in the 8,000 or 9,000 range. So there are plenty of lots out there which could in fact be developed, which haven't been up to this point. I think there are, well, I'm going to stop there because I'm throwing out kind of my recollection of those numbers, and they may not be quite accurate. I'm happy to bring that back to you again, though, to give you an accurate picture of what we have that has a residence on it and what we have that doesn't, and what could happen in the future.
That would be worth a look.
Yeah, sure. It's not lack of those being out there. They're not, on market, but once you kind of look at the number of those parcels compared to what our ownership is, particularly when you look at most of what we're acquiring is these agricultural lands and DFL lands and things that have very low allowable density. The amount of density that's actually is available up there is quite large.
So, consensus is that we'll have Lincoln draft up a letter that will address our points of concern with the plan, and then hopefully see where that goes. If we are finished with discussion on that, we'll move into the stewardship report.
Madam Chair, when are we going to do the second public?
I'm going to do that at the end.
At the end.
Yeah. Thank you for that reminder, though.
It wasn't on the agenda.
Yeah, I know. So I just tucked it in. I know we keep forgetting that. Anyway, so we'll move on to the stewardship report. Beautiful. I don't know if we don't usually read through this, but we make any comments that we would like to. I think my personal impression is I love reading it again, but the reminder of the 32-hour work week made me go back and think about Peter's report from Orcas. I mean, I know everybody's really busy, but there's a lot of stuff that went down on Orcas in terms of projects, and I'm not sure how that happens in a 32-hour work week, but just an observation.
Andy doesn't have a he doesn't have a field assistant right now either.
Not yet. Yes, he did have help, but I'm just so much gets accomplished on in all the districts on all the islands, but so I'm just going to have to ponder that 32-hour work week for a while. But I appreciate the report, as always, very thorough and educational. Any comments or questions for stewardship, regarding stewardship? Doug.
I'll just do a really quick report. I attended the it's called GERT, the Gary Oak Ecosystem Recovery Team. They call it an annual conference, but it's been since 2017 they've held one. I was in Victoria last weekend. Shauna Barrows and I went over, and it was fantastic. Very, very glad to go. We share so many more similarities in terms of those ecosystems and things with this surrounding area. That's mostly Vancouver Island, Gulf Islands, a little bit on the mainland there. Then we do with the South Sound and the Willamette Valley sort of counterparts. I won't get into all of the details, but I think there's going to be some really positive connections that have been made there. One that was sort of supplementary was that we were able to meet with Darcy Matthews, who is a archaeologist and ethnoecologist at the University of Victoria, and was expecting to go and just kind of meet him in person. We've had correspondences, and he said, "Well, let's go for a walk." And I thought we were just going to go, walk out on the campus and have a 20-minute conversation. He took us to a site in Victoria and basically gave us a 2.5-hour private field trip tour of it, and just had this very broad conversation, which I'm hopeful we might get some interest from one of his grad students in doing some work on one of our reserves. In general, I think that there's some really good chances for some cross-pollination there. So that was really, really good. Really great to share some of our good restoration work and research opportunities. Just grateful to have the opportunity to go for that.
Wow, great. That sounds great. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, we're going to move into outreach and communication. All right, Tanya.
Well, we've got a Know Your Island Walk, which is a partner event that will be at Beaverton next Saturday, and I think November will be the last month. I'll have to double check with Peter regarding tours. We've got 2 more tours at North Shore, but as the weather gets a little worse for wear, we'll probably, I think, hold off on those maybe in the spring. Fewer people are showing up, and there's a first Fieldwork Friday at Turtleback, first Friday of November, which is the 3rd. So he's gonna be busy that day, leading some things. We have some people signed up for that. And we're kind of slowing down as far as events, but work events will come up, or volunteer work events pop up, and that's it for now.
Great. Questions? Sandy?
Is there a fall community conversations planned?
That is a great question, Sandy. We haven't discussed that, and I guess I was going to ask offline to see if that's something we want to do. It's normally in November, but with everything, the strategic plan, I'm looking at you on my computer, everything with the strategic plan, I don't know. I guess that's something for y'all to think about if you have a bandwidth for that.
Could we ponder that? If we bump it to the November meeting, then we've lost November for the conversation. So I hadn't thought about it.
I wonder if it would be confusing if we're already engaging the public both through interviews and on the website to have yet another opportunity. I mean, I love opportunities to comment. I just wonder if it would be confusing.
Well, I'm hoping we have a Land Bank Commission meeting of some sort every single week.
Okay.
I'm sensing some insincerity there.
My council person is not giving me a kind look.
That was a stink eye.
No, I don't know. I think I'm pretty mixed on that. And when I think about the community conversations, certainly there's going to be a big opportunity for this coming out of the strategic plan. We're going to want to spend a lot of time telling the public about where we're headed and giving them more opportunity to comment on it. For now, I kind of agree that we're in the middle of this process. We're going to be having stuff out on the Engage platform, questions. We just interviewed people. I think it may be a little bit of overkill to do that at this point.
I would like other commissioners to weigh in on that. I'll express I would agree with Lincoln. I think we have a lot going on with completing the strategic plan within the time period that we set for ourselves. And I think to get people engaged on Engage, it's going to require a lot of outreach. And I think we could touch base with more people through that process than we might through a community conversation, which does put an extra load on it just in terms of the presentation and the topic and people being available for the meeting. So my personal vote would be to take a pass on this would be a district-wide one, right, Sandy, isn't it? I think the ones in the spring are individual islands, so this one would be a district-wide meeting.
Yeah,
I think so. I'm also I agree as well. So it was just a question I had. Now hearing everything, I agree that that's too much.
Anybody else disagree, commissioners?
Nope, makes sense to me.
Thanks for asking, Sandy.
Yeah, thanks for asking, Sandy. Thanks for the reminder. Okay. Future agenda items. We don't have any listed here. We do have about 4 that usually appear there. And off the top of my head, I can't recollect what they are.
And we're holding those as we continue through the strategic
plan. That's what I thought. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to open it up again to public comment. It's not on the agenda, but we have a second public comment period at the end of the meetings these days. So if either one of you who are here stayed around, if you would like to make a comment.
Krista, so I have something on future topics. You want me to wait till after?
Well, let's go ahead with public comments because I made the offer and then I'll come back.
Okay.
I just had a question about strategic planning update interviews. So those interviews have been going on already?
They have. We generated the list of about 200 people that we thought would be important to connect with, and with our consultants we winnowed that down to 60-ish, and we split that, and so those will be, yes, those are underway with the people, and we've reached out. Some have been scheduled, some people have not responded, and we're hoping to get those all done in early November.
Thank you, and thank you for allowing us to be here.
Oh yeah, oh, we love company. Okay, so back to future agenda item. Yeah.
Do you want me to
Sandy.
answer? Yes.
Yes.
So I just wanted to bring up that at the end of the year, we will have 2 commission positions opening, as both Krista and I will be transitioning off the commission. So we need to get some applicants and plan our outreach on that as well.
Thank you.
I would like to, I was going to bring that up as well, because last year, I believe we had new commissioners showing up in February, maybe early March. Right now we have 3 new commissioners on the board, and 2 who will be staying with us who have some history, and then 2 new ones as well. And I'm concerned about the number of new people we'll have on the board. Not that I don't love new people, but it seems like we should be getting going. And I don't think this is, I don't know who initiates this task, but it seems like we should be getting going as soon as possible to figure out what our board's going to look like in January.
you can start work on that now, but I think the problem we ran into is that the council rules make it that they will not make any final decisions until almost the end of the year. So we can't get anybody onboarded before January. But we can be doing outreach for potential interested candidates.
Okay.
But we can't move it along so that we could find someone and get them sworn in January 1st, because it has to go to council sometime in January. So there's a kind of right now a built-in delay.
Okay. I have two other non-related questions.
County code.
County code.
Just,
yeah,
you know, to
very, yeah.
Every single place I can.
Yeah, it's not her fault. Right.
I would second Marilyn's concern. I've been concerned about that too. But not just about onboarding new people, that's important. I know one of our commissioners is definitely leaving, but I would like to ask, particularly our council member, if there's any possibility of at least a temporary extension of one of those positions if the person would like to remain for a little bit.
Past their 3-term limit.
Yes.
At this point, my experience, based on decisions made by council, is no. That's been the overarching truth of the last 3 years. Yeah. And this is definitely the result of reviewing all the boards and commissions and recognizing that many of them have individuals who have been on them for a very long time.
I understand.
I personally don't see the harm if there's no applicants to keep a person in a position. I don't know how likely that'll be in this case. So we will stick to county code, which says 3 terms.
I just point out that this is a really critical period for the land bank, being in the middle of a strategic plan and also going into the reauthorization next year.
Yeah.
So transition and continuity are important.
They are. And so is following county code.
Oh, God.
I have 2 other questions that aren't related to that subject.
Sure.
I'm not sure when I could
We've got a little bit of time here because we're ahead of schedule.
Well, I can talk fast too. One of them has to do with the fact that I was looking through the TIP because the #1 project on the TIP this year is the proposed trail that goes from town to Zylstra Lake. And somewhere in that material, and I don't have it with me, it mentions that wetland mitigation would be provided by land bank property for that project. And I wondered if we had, if we anticipate in our management plan that we're going to need that to offer up to a roads department or county project for mitigation, or whether we have to amend our management plan at that point, or whether the county has the ability to preempt the management plan in order to use the property for something else. Is that a reasonable
You're
question?
talking about doing wetland mitigation on Zylstra?
Well, they mentioned
that's
that
not possible.
It's not possible.
It's just flat out not possible.
Okay.
We received a federal coastal wetlands conservation grant for the project, and we've been told that compensatory mitigation is not allowed.
So it probably depends on the parcel and its acquisition, how it was acquired.
Right. So by contrast, the work on Baylor Hill Road, we may be doing mitigation on False Bay Creek Preserve for that one, because that is allowed. Although there was a previous wetland violation before we bought that property, so there are other issues with that one too, but Zylstra's not on the table.
But do we have to change our management plan for the False Bay property, or does that already include it as an option? Do we anticipate that?
We'd have to take a look at the management plan, honestly. We've been doing a good bit of wetland restoration on that site, as well as other things. So it's a very complicated property, given that we've had agriculture, we've got a tiny bit of public use there, and then the whole wetland component. it's a tough one, and it's a tough situation down there too, because it is so wet and basically turns into a big river in the wintertime.
Thank you. I have one last question. This is for my fellow commissioners. At our last meeting, where I was on Zoom and everybody else was here, I think, I made a motion that I expected everybody, all the other commissioners, to jump in and add or subtract or argue with, and nobody did that. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about our process of making and passing motions, because I am of the school that I don't know enough to make a motion all by myself. And I appreciate other people's additions or corrections or criticisms of a motion, so that we can craft something that includes everything that everyone wants to see. And I just want to make sure, I mean, that's what I'd like to see among us. So just wondered how everybody else felt.
Could you remind us, Marilyn, what?
I didn't watch that part of the tapes. I don't know.
That was the motion to retain ownership of the Watmau edition, and to, you can ask me to repeat the whole thing, to accept the grants that we had been offered for them, and thirdly, to reach out to the tribes in our area to craft a management plan for the area.
My recollection is I seconded and made an amendment to the motion.
That was the amended motion. Yeah. But the first motion was stupid. And I thought it was completely, I mean, I was under some pressure, so I didn't think the original motion was adequate, and I would have welcomed participation in crafting the motion. And that's all I'm saying about our inner workings. I hope that we are comfortable with each other enough that we can have a discussion about a motion and make amendments to a motion with no hard feelings, of course, but recognizing that if we all chip in, maybe the motion, this includes you ladies there, then maybe the motion will be better for it. So
I don't know all Robert's rules that way, but I don't know. You're asking for construction of a group construction of a motion before it's made.
No, what I'm asking for is discussion. So
I don't think you can, once you make a motion though, I'm not sure how it works. There has to be a second before you can even discuss it.
And then you
have to discuss,
and then you can amend it,
which is what happened.
Right, and then you second your amendments.
But to answer your question, I think we do work don't have any worry about that. Like I think if there's a misstep or something, but I put you on the spot at that meeting. That was a special meeting for Watmau, and because I had misinterpreted something you said, I thought you were prepared to make a motion, and that's why I went back and picked you, and you were like, what? I was like, okay, I misinterpreted that, but so I did ask you to do that on the fly, and
so I just want to make sure I understand the process.
Yeah.
So okay.
I'm sorry.
You get the floor. Not my board meeting.
That may have been my fault in not picking up. I was chairing the meeting, and
no, this was
no, Kristen.
This was the Watmau special meeting.
Oh, the special meeting.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was that week.
Okay.
That was a different. Yeah.
I think we've resolved the issue. I just wanted. This is a new commissioner question. Is this how we do it, or is that how we do it?
Okay.
Now I know how we do it. Thank you.
Christine,
as an observer, nothing
Wasn't one on what was
awkward.
No. Yeah, I missed that. That's right.
Just saying.
Well, I've been in a lot of meetings, and I want to make sure that the process is understood by everybody. So I was the one who needed to understand the process. So now I do.
Well, I missed the meeting, so don't think I didn't care.
Bye.
But I've been here now. This is my second year, and I've never seen anybody be bashful about something they feel strongly about. And I appreciate you bringing that up, because there's nothing worse than serving on a board where everybody's compliant. You might as well just show up.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that up, but I don't think it's an issue with this commission.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly
Peggy, did you have a question?
I have a couple comments. I want to follow up on Marilyn's comment about that. And I think kind of what that's tying back into is the question of bringing in new commissioners when we have so many people that are new. And I would echo that. I hear Christine saying that that's probably not going to be possible, but anything we can do to help really educate all of us who are just starting, because there's a lot of us are pretty new on this, even though I've done it before, but it's new for me. So I just want to support Marilyn in that kind of request to make sure that we're all informed and educated about how best to follow protocol. I also wanted to, as a topic that we want to continue to go back to, is the tribal relations. And I want to make sure we really address that and figure out a strategy for how we're going to continue with that, especially given our decision on WAPMO, but even separate from our decision about WAPMO. But I think that's a really important piece that we really need to continue dedicating time to. So I want to put that on future agenda. And there was one other one. Anyway, I think that's good for now.
Mike?
Yep. A couple of thoughts. The two open slots, one is Lopez and one is Orcas.
So they're at large, but yes.
Oh, is it large?
One is at large, one is
Orcas.
Okay. I think it is good for this group to think hard about who we would like to add, or we would like to be added, and recruit them. Mm-hmm. They have to submit a application, I think, to the council. But I think given what I can see us thinking about and dealing with over the next 12 to 18 months, you know, it would be great to have some experienced people, people that understand the land bank and what it does and how important it is, that also are influential in their communities, because I think we're going to want to use that as part of, or want that to be part of what we use over the next 2 years to get forward on where we're going. So I know that the council, I assume the council would be appreciative of us working to attract people to possibly serve on the, at least want to and submit their application to serve on our commission. And because it makes their job a little bit easier. We certainly don't end up at the end with one person wanting two slots. You know, we end up with, you know, people who we think would really work well with this. And that goes along with that whole conversation you brought up earlier, Marilyn. And then, because it's just, I've been here 2 years. He's been here forever. Nobody else has been here much at all. And so, you know, I think having some experience, and that might mean looking back at prior commissioners who might want to serve again. I don't think there's any requirement. I don't think there's any.
Yeah. Oh, you can come back after how many terms off?
I don't know if it might just be one, if it's even called out.
I don't think it's even called out.
But 3 terms total.
Oh, in your
lifetime?
Yes.
Wow.
Well, I don't know that it's lifetime. It's just 6. It's in succession.
I think it'd be good to find that out.
Yeah.
Because our best resources might be somebody who served on this. They kind of come in knowing
I know that's what we're looking at.
What it was like.
Trying to, one of the
three terms total life
points is that we need to define these
right.
Sort of not necessarily very clear codes. Mm-hmm. That's part of the process that we are undertaking. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I was done.
So I definitely think, looking at past commissioners, if you so choose to have that conversation with, is fine.
Christine, if you are looking at the code, I would love to see you, I know it's not going to happen, but I'd love to see you looking at situations in which a certain percentage of a board might have served for less than X amount of time. And therefore, it would be in the interest of the public to have someone stand past their normal retirement date for a period, just for that experiential point.
Do you mean remain on the board?
Yeah, I guess what I'm saying is, for instance, you had your entire board disappeared except one person, and they were due to retire. Would you allow them to stay for a year or two to keep the board moving?
The other talking in the background makes it hard for us to hear.
Lincoln and Mike, you're interfering with the microphone picking up.
My experience is that boards and commissions are all staggered. Mm-hmm. So there's always some level of continuity. Mm-hmm. And depending on the number of members, it's, you know, that may have an impact. If it's only one person that's left that's been around for a while. I get what you're saying, but I haven't ever had an experience where it's all of them or.
I think we're just feeling a little thin right now.
Mm-hmm.
That will be the situation.
Yeah, so our terms are staggered. We did that intentionally, but then we had some things happen. We had people who had to leave the county, and so we lost commissioners who would have been more experienced and who are still
on
eligible, and they had to leave, and so now we're
understood.
Yeah,
and I mean, I've been here for that, so I get what you're saying. I don't think that will impact the decision to adhere to county code to fulfill
I understand
vacancies.
What I was speaking to is you said you were looking at some tweaks to the code.
Thank you.
And that's what I'm offering, is that idea as a tweak to the code, that there might be extenuating circumstances on a board in which the public's needs were met by allowing someone to continue past their normal point of retirement.
Okay.
So we're not going to solve that today.
No, we're probably not going to solve it in
anytime
soon. 6 months, but
my calendar just opened up, so it's great. So I think it's been a great meeting. I'm going to give 2 great ideas to Marilyn, since she's out trying to get to all the preserves and FYI to interview. So the first thing you should know is that Zylstra Lake doesn't allow dogs from October till May, because I went there to have a picnic with my husband and the dog a weekend or 2 ago, and got there and read the sign and went somewhere else. And one of the other places we went to was the Fraser Homestead. FYI, it's really just the big field. It's not the pretty house at the end of the road that we got to. And I thought, these gates do not look like anything that the land bank would own. And so we went through the drive around circle. There's no one home, thank God. That is private property, just FYI. It's very pretty. So make sure you know where you're going before you get there. Thank you everybody for participating. I'm going to adjourn the meeting right now, which is at 11:11. Thanks for coming. Have a good weekend.
Good job.
That's it. Thanks.
Thank
Good job, everybody.
Bye, everybody.